So, real quick, I am driving right now and I'm recording safely, hands free, all that. You are about to hear something that I recorded back in July, right? I had made an episode about talking to your family about leaving the program and listening to it back now. That I wish that I would have had a more in your face version. I feel like this is very soft. And this is where the whole lived experience thing comes in because I was thinking about how with my family, especially my mother, was her belief in those meetings for my recovery was so strong, right? And I say all the time, years after leaving the program and after everything I went through in the program, I still would recommend the program to people for a while because I thought it was my fault that it didn't work and that it would work for other people because I really did think that it works if you work it and there was just something fundamentally wrong with me. A little bit different now, but it's funny because that episode that I recorded, or this episode that you're about to listen to that I recorded, is still very soft about talking to your family about 12 step. And, I think for some families, the soft approach might be the better approach because even if I think about it, if I had done all my research and just straight up said to my mom, like, hey, this is actually pseudoscience and, people consider it to actually be a cult and all this stuff, she probably would have been like, oh my God, like we need to get her back to the emergency psych floor. It just depends on your situation the best. You know your people and you just got to do what works for you. But there were some things that I talked about in this episode that I did want to share. But when I went live with Sobriety Bestie on last Sunday, she had mentioned something about talking to your family about leaving AA. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember I recorded about that. So it's funny how, July was not that long ago. July was not that long ago. And even my feelings on how to talk to your family members about it has changed. Not changed, but I just wish again that I had a more in your face option when I was talking about this. I hope that you guys enjoy the episode and I will talk to you later.
Today, we are doing an episode about how to talk to your family about leaving the program without them thinking that you are losing your shit. If you've been thinking about leaving the program or you already did and you're nervous about telling your family, this episode is for you because whether you have been to 5 meetings or 500 meetings, once people start to see you, or at least in my experience, right? Once people start to see you as in the program, they start to believe and treat that as if that's the thing that is holding you together. Your family can start to see that is the thing that's helping. That is the thing that is working for you. So once you walk away, to them, it can feel like you're announcing your own funeral. Honestly, I know that sounds drastic, but that's how it can feel to some families. Like my mom truly thought that those meetings were what I had to do. She knew nothing about them, right? Other than she was told by the Plymouth House that that's what I had to do. And once she got that implanted in her brain, she believed for years that those meetings were the key to me being sober. I think a lot of us have stayed in the program longer than we wanted to, not because it was helping, but because we didn't want to let our families down. Like we knew that once our families found out that we weren't going to meetings anymore, all hell was going to break loose. When I tell you that I totally understand what it's like to have your family, not so much my dad kind of lost faith in the meetings, but my mom just thought like as long as I was going to those meetings, like that's what I needed to do and that's what was going to work. So when she found out I wasn't going to meetings anymore, it was a big deal. I've talked about this before, especially on TikTok, when people say nobody holds you hostage in AA. I don't even think I've mentioned this part. Even if your own brain is like, okay, I don't think that I'm going to end up using. What about your family members? There are some of us who our whole freedom or our whole relationship with our family was based on us being members of the program, because our families thought that if we weren't attending those meetings and working with the sponsor and working those steps that they didn't really know a whole lot about, but they thought that that was the key to us being okay. I get that this is a big deal. Like when people say that whole nobody holds you hostage in AA, this is another reason that keeps people going to meetings that they don't want to be going to, is their relationship with their family members based around them being members of the program, because they're so convinced that that is what makes them okay. And they've been told that, you know, those signs to look out for. One of those signs is when they stop going to meetings. So of course, family members are going to be scared when you stop going to meetings if they've been told that that's the first sign to you not doing okay. Let's start here before we get into it. You're not wrong for wanting to leave, or you're not wrong if you left. You're not betraying anybody, not being reckless. It's not your disease trying to convince you that you're unwell. You're simply recognizing that this one program, this very strict one size fits all program, doesn't fit you. And that's okay, because it doesn't work for most people. Once you realize that this one size fits all path doesn't fit you, that's going to scare the people around you who were taught that that is the path for people like you. Like, people like you need to go to these meetings and they need to work the steps. So when they hear something like, you know, you don't need to do that, that's something they've never heard before. Your family might only know about recovery through the 12-step lens, even if they've never gone to a meeting. I say this all the time. You never have to step foot into a meeting to have a head full of dogma, right? It's all around us. So for a lot of families, the little bit about recovery that they do know is through that 12-step lens. So hearing something different, especially when they've been taught to see that as a red flag, is obviously going to be a problem. So we can see where it's coming from. I think a lot of us were not necessarily upset with our family members for seeing it that way, because we used to see it that way too. Again, they've been told that your disease wants you dead. So your disease is going to convince you of things to get you away from your recovery. Like most of our families, that's their biggest fear, right? Is that we're going to die from this, because that's all they hear from the professionals. And then they've been traumatized from watching you struggle in the past, that any little red flag is extra alarming for them. I know for my mom, if I ever sounded anything other than totally happy, it was like when I would call her, because I used to have to call her every single day, because she told me that I owed that to her, because I used to make her worry all the time. So I have to call her every single day. And when I was in 12 step, you know, I was advised that, well, that's part of your living amends. Even though for me, sometimes it would be, oh shit, sorry, mom, I know you watch this sometimes, but you know, whatever. Sometimes, mom, when it is awkward when I remember my mom's watching this, but I mean, this is just honest, okay? Sometimes, like, I would be like not in the best mood, right? And then I wouldn't want to call you, because anytime that I would sound anything other than happy, you'd be like, oh, what's going on? You feeling okay? Yeah. You know, like, you know what I'm talking about. And dad, I know you're watching it with her. You know what I'm talking about. And like, I love you. Like, you're great. But there was a time that it was exhausting just having to play this part of being okay, even though like I was okay. I wasn't like, this is when I was done. Like, I wasn't using anymore. But my mom, like, any sign of not being okay was a red flag, just from everything was taught, right? Or like anything that she had witnessed before. Like when I was moody, it was, you know, when I was using, like all of these things. Like our family members, well, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but if you are someone who is struggling to have this conversation with the family member, then you're probably someone who can relate to them looking at any little thing and interpreting it as a red flag, because they're just, it's not because they're being hateful or anything. It's because they love you and they don't want to see you struggle. But it can be so annoying, right? Because you're human, and like, what human is happy all the time? But anyways, to tell your family member who believes that your recovery is based on you going to these meetings, that's going to kick up a whole lot of fear when you tell them that you're done going to meetings, that you're going to do it without the meetings. But it's not your job to carry their fear, right? Like, it's your job, and honestly, for their best interest too, in the long run, it's your job to protect your journey and your growth. And in the end, that's what your family member wants to see anyways, right? Like, they want to see you growing and succeeding. So while it might be really scary right now, in the long run, they're going to benefit from that too, because that's what they want to see. Like, I know this can be so frustrating, but when you do take a step back, they're victims of the system, right? The system that convinces people that if their loved one has a substance use disorder, then they need to worry about this disease for the rest of their life. Like, forget it. If they go to Al-Anon, man, I am so lucky that my mom went a couple times, and she was just like, I don't understand. Went there to try to find out how to help you. And instead, there's people who are celebrating like the amount of time it's been since they've talked to their loved one. Like, they celebrated it as a milestone. Now, I'm not going to say that every Al-Anon meeting is like that. That was the experience that she had. I didn't go to Al-Anon, so I don't have experience with it. But I do know that they use 12-step dogma. They work the steps around this whole idea of being codependent, which, man, that's definitely another conversation we need to have. Speaking of codependent, I didn't even mean to set that up perfectly, but as soon as I said it, I thought of this book, and this is the second Coming to Harm Reduction, Kicking and Screaming by Dee Stout. But there was a section, I hope I can find it real quick. Yeah, here it is. The 3 worst words in addiction treatment: codependency, enabling, and tough love. I was like, oh yeah. There's still so much of this I need to read. When I saw that, when I just flipped through it, when I got it, I was like, absolutely. So I wrote down like just a couple of talking points that could kind of keep you grounded in the conversation. So when the topic comes up, like, let's say it comes up organically, like, are you still going to meetings? And when you tell them like, no, I'm not, I actually took a step back from meetings and for whatever your reason is, right? Like, because it was no longer serving me, because, whatever. And they're going to be concerned and look at it as almost like you giving up on yourself sometimes, right? Is how they can look at it. And it's more of like, I'm not giving up on myself. I'm finding what actually works for me, because you're not quitting your recovery path, your healing journey, however you choose to identify it and describe it. You're choosing a path that actually aligns with you, with your values, with your needs, with your brain, right? And if it's not that faith-based program that they try to call it spiritual, and suddenly that's supposed to make it that much better, there are so many other, like, we don't need to force ourselves into this box because that's the only thing that's going to save our life, right? Like, if it doesn't align with us, then it's probably not going to save our lives. And like, why are we spending so much time trying to fit in this box when there is so much outside of that box? But you don't know that if you're constantly fed this narrative, and our family members don't know that because they're fed the same narrative. So depending on the path that you take, you can say something like, I'm still focused on my health and stability. I'm just choosing a route that's evidence-based and doesn't rely on calling myself an addict every day or tell me that I'm powerless every single day. Like, it's something that empowers me. And that's the thing too, is a lot of our family members don't even necessarily know what goes into the steps and what goes on in meetings. Some do, but I know there's a lot of family members that don't. They just know that that's what you're supposed to do, or what they've been told that you're supposed to do. I think that you don't have to necessarily go in strong with, it's up to you, honestly. Like, but I think sometimes, because again, looking at our family members and what they've been told, if we, from the very first time that we talk to them about it, come in hard with all of the reasons why we don't like the program, then that can be seen as another red flag. Like, oh no, like, they're getting resentful about this program that saved their life, like blah blah blah, like, so I think, and again, this is you and your journey and your conversation, but just my personal like advice as someone who has thought a lot about this and gone through it, you could say something more along the lines, it's definitely not the only way to recover. And I feel like I've kind of outgrown it and I'm ready to expand. I know there's more out there for me. And there's plenty of research showing people recover in all kinds of ways and not just through 12-step. Something else you can say is, I know that there's fear around people leaving the program, but what scares me more is staying in something that's not working just to avoid upsetting people. And that one obviously a little more emotion, but it's very real. It's going to depend on where you're at and why you're leaving. But if people who are very invested in us emotionally to the point where they're going to get upset about us leaving the program, I think it is important to let them know that, yeah, I understand the fear that you have, but where I'm at right now, like, this isn't working. So I want to choose a path that is going to work for me, because this is not connecting and there's so much more out there, and rather than just like, and I don't want to, I mean, I guess it would depend, and it would definitely depend on where your 12-step programming is in your brain. This is just kind of some ideas to get the conversation going, or just some things to kind of let you know that it's okay to say these things, right? Like, you may have a different way of saying them, may have a different way to bring the conversation. I'm going to have a couple letters that you can kind of look at. I'll probably read one of them at the end. Then I just wrote down some tips. I said, keep it short and clear. You don't have to explain yourself in circles. This is just you letting them know because you care about their feelings, right? Like, this is your decision to make, but you're letting them know because you're not doing anything wrong. So there's nothing wrong with being open and honest with them about where you're at in your recovery. You're coming to them like the adult that you are and letting them know that you're no longer going to the meetings, or you're thinking about leaving, or wherever you're at in this stage. And giving them a chance to ask a couple questions if they have it, and to just let them know where you're at. Like, hey, like, this actually isn't a bad thing. It's kind of an exciting thing. I'm at a place where I'm going to see what really does work for me and help me grow. And like, just remember, that's not a bad thing. It's an exciting time that you are spreading your wings and finding a path that's going to work for you and help you grow in your journey. Another thing I put down was, don't get baited into debating things like the disease model. If they want to argue that philosophy, you can always say something like, I've done my research. I'm happy to send you some if you're open to learning more, but I'm not going to debate my healing path with you, right? Like, there's plenty of information out there that is probably not what you think that it is, and I'm happy to share it with you if you are open to reading it, but this really isn't up for a debate because this is me choosing what is going to work for me. Right. And if it does get heated, just pause the conversation. It's not worth the argument, and not that you have to appease anyone, but again, you're not doing anything wrong. I think and this is just my advice, like, you never have to take my advice, right? I think for so long, we're coming from a place where we feel like we have to prove ourselves, like, all the time, especially to family members who have gone through so much with us and we've let down the most. There is a lot to prove sometimes, right? Like, I know I did have a lot to prove, and sometimes it would get really frustrating because you constantly feel like you have something to prove. But I think to have the upper hand in the conversation, where, like, before, when I was using, like, I would get all crazy and I would get all animated and I would get all upset. So I'm going to want to of how I used to act, because I know that my family member is on high alert and looking for all the red flags now, right? So if the conversation gets heated, just pause it and say, like, I'm happy to talk about this, when we can be respectful. If that's not right now, then we can try again another time. That's fine. I was just trying to share with where I'm at on my recovery journey. Clearly now's not a good time, and just kind of keep it like that. I know sometimes they can push your buttons and make it really hard. Again, this is your journey. This is your next step. This is you doing what works for you. And then remember, they haven't had any of the deprogramming or any of the information that you have now. They're still living in a very 12-step abstinent-based world and believing the disease model as fact, because that's what they've been told from the professionals that they took you to when they took you to treatment, right? So as frustrating as they can be, they're looking at us from a place of love because they love us, but also from being brainwashed. So you got the double whammy there. And then this is the one that takes time. Let the action speak. You don't have to prove your path. You can just live it. Just live it and just keep doing what works for you, and it'll prove itself. Like, you don't have to do anything to prove it when you're just doing what works for you, you know? And then if you think conversation is just not the way to go, you can always write them a letter, send them an email, a text message. And I have 2 different sample ones that I wrote. One I actually wrote for somebody a while back, and I've given it to a couple of other people who have had questions from when they were leaving the program. And then this one is a shorter one that I wrote because the other one it's not super long, but it has a little bit more length to it. And I think this one sums it up a little bit shorter. So maybe you'll take part of this, part of that one. Maybe you'll just read them and it'll help you spark an idea for yours. But I know how big of a deal this is, and I want to give it the attention and, a couple of resources that it deserves to have. If you have any questions, you can always leave a comment. And then other people in the community can also, because that's the thing, I know that I'm not the only one that's had to announce this to their family that they're no longer part of the program. And I know plenty of other people have gone through this. So, if you're going through it or if you have questions, leave it in the comments and we will give our best, or we'll do our best to give you the guidance that we can. This is a unique experience. It's one of those things that those of us who get it, and those who don't just really won't. Leaving the program is a crazy experience, and it can be really different for a lot of people. For some people, the program is their only support system. They don't have any family members, they don't have any friends. Like, the program became their one and only. Then there are those of us who, like myself, yes, the program became a big part of my support system, but it also was a big factor in my parents, believing that I was okay. As long as I was going to those meetings, as long as I was working on my recovery, then I was doing what I was supposed to do. And it was something that was like a checks and balances thing to my family, and letting them know that I'm okay. And so when you stop going to the meetings and you lose your support system from the people in the meetings, and then you also have the pressure from your family now thinking that you're already headed for using, if you're not already using, like in their head, it's just complete devastation. It's intense, and I'm absolutely positive that when you have nobody left and the only people that you rely on is the program, that's huge too. So there are so many levels to leaving the program. And again, I cannot stand when that whole nobody keeps you hostage in the program, because there are so many outside factors that keep people in the program when they don't want to be there. But it's important we talk about it, because a lot of us have gone through this in one way or another. I hope you'll read this with an open heart. I've decided to step away from the 12-step program. I know that might feel scary. I know how often we've all been told that the program is the way. And I know you're probably seen and heard things that make you feel, And I know all right, guys. Well, I hope today was a little bit helpful in this conversation. It is absolutely something that we can explore more. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. And I will see you guys next time.